This is The Arm of the Starfish by Madeleine Chapter 14. After lunch, Jose brought 3 horses around to the bungalow, and Dr. O'Keefe, Polly, and Adam set off for the village, riding uphill to the plateau with the monolithic slabs of stone. As Joshua had stopped by the great central table the day before, so did Dr. O'Keefe, although he did not dismount. Polly and Adam reined up beside him. Adam's spirits soared despite the fierceness of the sun. The doctor was sitting erect on his horse, as though waiting. He caught Adam's inquiring gaze, and said, Virbius, the chief of this village, wished to meet us here. Visitors aren't encouraged there. The people from the hotel have brought only disease and trouble. But you are under my aegis, and he will escort us. Adam nodded. Dr. O'Keefe continued to sit straight and tall, and Polly was in one of her rare silent moods. Adam looked around at the great stone table above which a golden butterfly was fluttering. The flash of a bird's scarlet wing led his gaze beyond the encircling stones and through the trees that edged the plateau and into a clearing. In the clearing were a few small white slabs with light moving over them, and leaf shadows, green, mauve, and indigo. Again, Dr. O'Keefe followed Adam's gaze. Yes, it's a cemetery. A small one. The villagers have their own, and if anyone does anything as inconvenient as dying at the resort hotel, they're whisked back to the mainland as inconspicuously as possible. He held up his hand for silence, and they could hear a rustling in the brush. A yellow and black bird flashed across the clearing, followed by a wizened old man on a horse, and a dark and shriveled old man with a few strands of soft, silvery hair. Adam had no doubt that this was Virbius, the chieftain. Polly had said that he was how old? 149? Adam knew that the villagers' way of counting time was probably different from the way he'd been taught in school. But if Virbius was not 149, then he was certainly the oldest man Adam had ever seen. Far older than old Doc, who, after all, was 90. Dr. O'Keefe raised his arm in greeting. Virbius responded, the gesture full of dignity despite the fact that his hand was tremulous with age. Without a word, he turned his horse and headed into the brush again. Dr. O'Keefe followed, with Polly and Adam in single file behind him on a narrow path. They rode through the low brush along the spine of the plateau. The sun was high and hot, and so that their shadows were small dark blobs moving along the scrub. Somehow Adam was grateful for the golden warmth that seeped through him, even though his shirt began to cling damply to his body. The blue, almost cloudless sky was so high that there seemed to be between earth and sky a golden shimmering of sunlight. The red of Dr. O'Keefe's and Polly's hair was touched with gold. Gold, gold, everything glinted and glimmered, and light as well as heat penetrated Adam's pores. He had lost track of time. Would time ever seem normal, accountable to him again? When the path started to descend, below them lay the straw roofs of the village, the large central hut, with smaller huts raying out from it, the whole village on a promontory about a perfect natural bay. In the bay, fishing boats were anchored, and Adam thought he could see others, small dark specks out at sea. While they were still a fair distance from the village, Virbius stopped his horse, raised his arm, this time in a gesture of command, and let out a strange, penetrating whistle. For a moment all the activity in the village seemed to cease, suspended in time. Then women and children scurried into huts. Men who were working on upturned fishing boats on spread-out nets moved leisurely but definitely away, disappearing either into the thick jungle growth that edged the village or into the huts. Polly turned back to Adam. Don't be hurt. It's just because it's your first time here. They have to make sure. They've been so abused by the hotel people. Polly, Dr. O'Keefe said without turning. Sorry, Daddy, Polly said. Virbius started forward, his horse moving slowly, carefully, on the last steep downward grade. As they came into the village, Adam saw that each hut was surrounded by a profusion of flowers that seemed to grow wildly. But, remembering his mother's garden at the Cape, he had a suspicion they were carefully tended. The fishing boats were large, heavy shells, reminding him of pictures he'd seen of Phoenician vessels. All were painted with strange emblems. The most startling boats were stark black or white, with prows which reared sharply upward on either side, and on either side of which were painted two very wide, open eyes. Virbius led them directly to the waterfront, to the harbor. He raised his hand, and two small boys came running to him, appearing, it seemed to Adam, out of nowhere, to take care of the horses. A long T-shaped wooden dock led out into the water, and Virbius, moving slowly and stiffly, his great age more apparent than it had been while he was mounted, led the way, keeping always a few paces in front of the others. Ahead of them, in the water, Adam could see what he realized must be the pens Polly had told him about. As they reached the T at the end of the dock, Virbius beckoned to Polly, pointed to one of the pens, and began to speak to the child. Adam stood beside Dr. O'Keefe, looking into the pen in which a dead shark floated. It had obviously been wounded, not by another fish, but by some kind of weapon, a long knife, judging by the wounds. A strange odor came from the water, which Adam guessed was something to disguise the smell of blood, and the water itself was murky. Virbius's words sounded like gibberish with a touch of the Portuguese soft sh and sh added. Polly's head cocked, listened, frowning with concentration. He says that this is the same shark that attacked Themis. To Adam, he explained. Themis is one of Virbius's great-great-grandchildren, Adam. Last night, the shark attacked one of the children right here in the harbor, and one of Virbius's nephews went after him with a knife and drove him into the pen. The child is all right. His wounds are healing cleanly, and there will be only a scar on one leg to show that anything happened. They did everything you told them to about the shark, Daddy, but the shark has died. Virbius says that he has prayed neither for nor against him, but that it is justice. The shark died this morning, and they kept him only for you to see. From the dock, Dr. O'Keefe took a pole with a large hook and pulled the dead beast in. Then he squatted down at the edge of the pen and examined it carefully. Virbius had moved along the dock and was standing beside the next pen. Adam followed him. Here the water was brilliant, clear green with purple shadows. A small school of tiny fish flashed by in a swoosh of silver. At the bottom, sea plants moved, their green, white rose fronds undulating in a sinuous dance. Swimming ponderously in the pen was a large and extremely cross-looking tortoise. His head was stretched out in the leathery neck to its full length, and he glowered and blinked. Adam could see that one of the four legs had been almost, or perhaps entirely, torn off. It was healing neatly. The turtle turned his head toward Adam, put a scornful nose in the air, and then, with an indignant gesture, retired completely into his shell. Polly shook with laughter. He's the snootiest animal I've ever come across. McCrean is fond of him, so I suppose he's all right. But he has no manners whatsoever. Adam was surprised to hear Virbius let out a thin, dry cackle of amusement as he moved on to the next pen. In this was a shark whose dorsal fin had been ripped off in some kind of marine battle. Small, ugly lumps were appearing where the fin had been. Of course, we don't get many sharks, Polly said, but we've never had one regenerate normally. I can't even be sorry for them, and Josh says I'm a fool about all animals, but not sharks. I hate them. I would far prefer to meet a stingray coming around a corner, and they look like bats out of hell if any beast ever did. Dr. O'Keefe moved up to join them. I'm very pleased about the turtle, bad manners or no. One of our most exciting successes has been a seagull wing. We would never have managed that without Virbius. While the bird couldn't fly, it was all right, but he wanted to use his wing too soon, and only Virbius could control him. Virbius spoke, and again Polly translated. He says his gods are very powerful, and they gave him some of their power. Virbius spoke again, spreading out his hands. He says it was the way Father Tom's God gave him of his power the night he stayed up with Macrina. Virbius says they must be good friends. Who? Adam asked. Canitalis and Virbius? No, silly, Polly said impatiently. They're gods. Virbius nodded. If he spoke nothing but his own native tongue, he understood. Adam guessed almost everything that was said. And if he understood English, then it was more than likely that he also understood Portuguese. Adam realized that the old man was no one to underestimate. As a matter of fact, he reminded the boy, in many of his mannerisms, of a combination of Old Doc and Mahatma Gandhi. There were 2 other tanks which were presumably empty at the moment, because neither Virbius nor Dr. O'Keefe went to them. Virbius led the way back up the dock to the village and to the green clearing in front of the central hut. Around the hut and climbing up its walls were flowers of every shade of blue, and Adam noticed that none of the other dwellings had blue flowers. There was every color of red, orange, yellow, but no blue. Virbius squatted down, beckoning to Polly to sit on his right side, Adam on his left. Dr. O'Keefe sat cross-legged opposite the old man. From the central hut came a woman and a child, a girl perhaps Polly's age, perhaps younger. They bore coconut bowls, which they set down in front of the visitors. Polly gave a warm, welcoming grin to the child, which was equally warmly returned, but neither of them spoke. Virbius raised his hand for silence, although no one was speaking, then bowed over his coconut bowl, murmuring in his native tongue and swaying slightly from side to side. He took the bowl, raised it over his head in a gesture of offering, then sipped from it. Dr. O'Keefe raised his bowl in a similar gesture, and Polly and Adam followed suit. Adam did not know what it was they were drinking. Something strange and cool and sharp. Virbius beckoned to the child, who squatted down on the grass in front of the old man. Adam decided she was definitely younger than Polly, although already more developed physically. She had straight, lustrous black hair, and a dark skin through which the golden glow seemed to shine, as though she had caught and contained the light in which the island was drenched. She smiled at Dr. O'Keefe, who smiled back, a smile of both compassion and joy. Virbius spoke, and Polly translated. Is it all right? Dr. O'Keefe nodded. I'll tell them that Josh brought back all the lab reports Father Tallis got in Boston. Everything is perfectly normal. As Polly spoke, the child raised one golden brown hand, looking wonderingly at the 5 outstretched fingers. Adam turned to Dr. O'Keefe. Yes, this is Tamus. The child the shark attacked 6 months ago. Her body was badly slashed, and one of her fingers was severed. Beside him, Adam heard a strange sound, and looked to see that Virbius was crying, tears rolling unchecked down his wrinkled cheeks. Putting one hand on the child's shoulder, the old man stood up. then raised both arms heavenward, calling out in a loud voice. With the tears still streaming, he turned to Dr. O'Keefe and embraced him. There were tears in Dr. O'Keefe's eyes, too. Thomas stood quietly, smiling. Polly said to Adam, "We were sure it was all right, but it's good to have all the lab work say so, too. When the shark attacked Thomas, Virbius called Daddy. I'd never seen Daddy so upset. He said he wasn't ready, that it wasn't time. The body would heal. That wasn't the problem. It was the lost finger. You couldn't say, let's try, there's nothing to lose. There'd been the deformities, and there'd been the horrible malignancies. Father Tom came, and he and Virbius and Daddy sat up all night. And then Daddy said he'd try. Father Tom stayed to help. He never left Thomas. He and Daddy and Virbius. And then it happened, Adam. It happened, and it's all right, and Thomas has 5 fingers again." Her eyes filled. "But Adam, if it hadn't been all right, if the new growth hadn't been natural, if it had devoured Thomas the way that it has devoured some of the animals when things haven't gone right?" She choked and stopped. Her father took her hand. "Hush, Polly. It's all right," he said to Adam quietly. Polly's anguish during this time was making her ill. As soon as we were sure that everything was going as we prayed it would, Tom Tallis took her away with him. The trip to Boston was to take slides and x-rays to a zoologist there, but served as a needed change for Polly, too. When you landed in Madrid instead of Lisbon and had to be bailed out of the airport, things were complicated. But Tom managed to get the reports to one of our friends, who in turn got them to Josh. So, in spite of a little unexpected confusion, we have all the lab reports and clearances. "And it's all right," Polly cried, joy driving the tension from her face. "It's all right." Dr. O'Keefe said heavily, "Through the grace of God, it's all right. I know now that I know nothing, and many men think that I know everything. And this is where the danger lies, if only we had more time." Virbius said something, and Polly translated for her father. "He says that time is a dream, but that his gods and Father Tom's are awake." Dr. O'Keefe put his hand for a moment on the old man's shoulder. Then he and Virbius bowed in silent farewell, and the doctor moved quickly away. Adam and Polly followed him, and as they walked away from the harbor and the village, the 2 little boys came up with the horses, which had been watered and rubbed down. They rode in silence. The sun was beginning to move toward the horizon. The long fronds of the palms rattled in the evening breeze, their shadows like great dark birds. Adam's white horse blew gently through her nostrils, and her flanks lifted a patient sigh. But to Adam it was as though everything were bathed in light, as though the golden sun of the island had at last penetrated the darkest reaches of his mind. He understood now. All the pieces had fallen together to make a clear and unmistakable picture. He knew why he was important to Mr. Cutter, why anybody even remotely connected with Dr. O'Keefe would be important to all the Mr. Cutters. And he knew why the Mr. Cutters of the world must never be allowed to see Dr. O'Keefe's papers, particularly Dr. O'Keefe's papers on Thomas. Unconsciously he heaved a sigh less patient than the old white horses. "What's the matter?" Polly asked. "Nothing. Just wish I didn't have to have dinner with the Cutters this evening." But it seemed there was no evading the dinner. When they got back, his good suit had been pressed and was laid out on the bed, with a clean shirt and his most colorful tie, a rather splotchy blue and red affair that Adam had called his Jackson Pollock. Mrs. O'Keefe told him, "Maria chose the tie, so if you don't mind wearing it, Adam, it would make her happy." "As long as you think it's okay. I'm kind of fond of it." He dressed carefully, but more to please Maria and the O'Keefes than Callie. He would have liked to go to Callie in his lab clothes, already slightly stained, and a symbol of his work, and somehow also a symbol of where he stood. But this he realized, would be rather Don Quixote sort of gesture, and not very effective. Shortly before time for the hotel helicopter to come for him, Dr. O'Keefe summoned him to the laboratory. Adam, you are probably wondering why I want you to have dinner with the Cutters tonight. Well, sir, I suppose maybe it would be wisest if they didn't know I've made up my mind. I mean, it might be a good idea if they think I'm still willing to work for them. The doctor looked at him with approval. Exactly. I hate to ask you to do this, Adam. It's going to be difficult for you. One of your most evident qualities is a direct honesty, a provocation that of any kind isn't easy for you. However, there is an urgent and immediate need for this. Once the results of any experiment are in, I have to get them off the island as quickly as possible. The papers on Themis are finally complete. I don't have to tell you how important they are. All the lab reports from Boston are in code, and I will now double code them. This will take me about a week. There's only one man, and he's in Lisbon, who can break the code so that they can get from the embassy to Washington. During this week, I'll keep the real papers on me and leave others, indicating another experiment, in the lab. Josh took a set of these phony papers with him, and will be careful to see that the right or the wrong people get a hold of them. Now we come to the problem of getting the Themis papers to Lisbon. Joshua, of course, has been my courier many times, but now it's safe neither for him nor the papers. I've used Maria twice, Jose once, but it's not fair to ask them again. The ambassador himself has been an errand boy on occasion. Next week it will have to be you. If you can make Cutter think you're willing to play along with him because you think he's right, then you'll be under less suspicion than anybody else. I don't think anything has been discovered about Themis, and it must not be. He stopped, repeated slowly, it must not. I know, sir. So I want you to make a date with Callie in Lisbon. I'll give you some papers to give to her. They'll look legitimate, and they'll follow the ones I'll appear to be working on this week, and that Josh took back to Lisbon with him. We'll talk later about getting the real papers away. The point is that tonight you must appear to still be confused about me. You are not confused any longer, are you? No, sir. Adam's voice was firm and confident. Let Typhon Cutter do his emotional patriotic act for you. It's very effective. Yes, sir. He's already done it. It did confuse me. All clear now? Yes, sir. You understand what I am asking you to do? Yes, sir. Adam swallowed. It will kind of not to make up for anything. That's over and done with. And no real harm, thank God. You're doing this for the future. For heaven and the future's sakes? Adam asked softly. Dr. O'Keefe nodded. This is where Joshua has been so remarkable. His love and need are entirely one. And while the work has been play for him, he has been well aware of the mortal stakes. Only where love and need are one, and the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and future's sakes. Think of Joshua tonight, if you like. You couldn't have anybody better to follow. Above them, they heard a loud droning. Dr. O'Keefe remarked, "They're very prompt," and stood up. The helicopter dropped clumsily on the beach in front of the bungalows. Polly, running with the other children to say goodbye, called, "You'll get sand in your shoes." "It'll shake out," Adam answered. Barefooted, she caught up with him, gently shoving Peggy ahead and saying, "Run, look at the helipegs." She whispered to Adam, "I have what I told you I'd give you. Here, just pretend you're holding my hand." Charles asked, "What are you whispering about?" Polly stomped her bare foot against the sand impatiently. "Charles, please. Oh, do run get Johnny for me, quickly, and let me say goodbye." "Adam's just going out for dinner," Charles said, but he went after Johnny, who, fully dressed, was heading for the water. Adam put his hand around Polly's firm, thin one. What is it? Adam, have you ever seen a switchblade? Yes, Adam said, smiling. Is that what you're giving me? Polly scowled darkly. You're condescending to me. I'm sorry, but if it's a switchblade, I don't want one, and I don't like the idea of your having one. Polly shook her head impatiently so that her red hair flew about her face. Okay, I know you copped with gangs on the streets of New York and all that jazz. This isn't an ordinary switchblade. What's extraordinary about it? It looks like a switchblade, and it works like a switchblade. I'm taking this on hearsay because I've never actually used one. But it's really kind of a hypodermic needle. Polly, for heaven's sake. There's a channel in the blade filled with MS-222. And what do you expect me to do with it? Use it on Callie? Use it on Callie? Again, Polly pawed the sand. She'll probably ask you to go for a moonlight swim, and there have been sharks at the hotel beach this summer, though they won't admit it. I wouldn't put it past Callie to send you straight into the shark's jaws, and Daddy says MS-222 is still the best thing. It knocks them out right away. When the blade is released, a capsule of MS-222 is punctured, and it goes right in, so you don't have to aim for a vital spot or anything. It's on a belt, and it looks like an ordinary knife. It's quite flat, so you can wear it under your bathing trunks. You've got them with you, haven't you? Yes, your mother told me to bring them along. Which ones? Just the plain navy ones, Paul. I guess I'm not uninhibited enough to wear the wild ones the way Josh does. You'll promise me you wear the belt with a knife? Adam knew that he could not hurt Polly by laughing at her intensity. Well, I don't really think Callie wants to dispose of me. But thanks anyway, Paul. Polly pulled at his jacket sleeve. Promise me you'll never go swimming without it? Even if I go with you? Not with me, Goosey. Macrina keeps the sharks away. But anywhere else? Promise. But Polly. Promise? All right. Polly heaved a great sigh of relief. Okay, I know I can trust your word. Goodbye. I suppose I'll be in bed when you get home. I don't really want you to have a good time, but I'm going to be polite and tell you to have one. But it's just courtesy. So, have a good time. She turned and ran back to the bungalows, not standing on the sea wall to wave and watch him off as he had expected her to. The other children called and waved, and Adam waved back, but he found himself looking beyond them for Polly. The pilot was Portuguese, and if he spoke English, he kept it a closely guarded secret. Adam was glad for the minutes of silence. No, silence was certainly not the word. No, silence was certainly not the word, for a helicopter is a noisy bird. But for a time of not having to listen to new ideas, of not having to respond. As they landed on the flat roof of the hotel, Callie was waiting and came running to meet him. She flung her arms around him, whispering, Adam, help me, help me. I've been all wrong about everything. I know now that Daddy's doing things that aren't right. Adam, what am I going to do?